Scrappers, by becoming a Patreon supporter, not only will you receive market news that other scrappers don't get, you will give us the ability to make more videos, more podcasts, and show you more ways to make more money with your scrap by becoming a Patreon supporter today. Hey Scrappers, it's Tom from the iScrap Map, and in this edition of Scrap You Later, we are going to feature our metal of the month, which is aluminum, one of everyone's favorite metals. And if you look at those ABCs of metals that I've talked about before, aluminum, brass, copper, then that little apostrophe comes in, then the S is steel, and of course we've already spoken about copper and we've spoken about steel before, so these are all things that we have actively talked about for years here at iScrap. But in this podcast we want to go into a little bit of the history of aluminums, different uses of aluminum, just to give you a little background information. You know, one of the things that we found is that so many people get so caught up and so tied up in what they're doing today that you don't know the history of things. You don't think about uses and the whys and the hows different metals and different alloys kind of come about. You know, because when you look at a metal like aluminum, yeah, it's on the periodic table of elements. You have your big Al symbol, but it's not something that's just mined out of the ground like copper ore or steel ore would be. It's more of a byproduct, or it's mixed in with some other things. So when we were reading some of the notes, and you'll see me reading some things back and forth here, you know, aluminum comes from other stuff. And one of the biggest things that it's pulled out of is bauxite. And when you have that aluminum bauxite coming out of the ground, you know, it's going to be mixed with all types of different things. It could be mixed with copper, zinc, magnesium. It could be mixed with other things inside of that metal. You could have iron ore in the area. And when all these things are mixed together, it goes into a different refining process. And if you read one of the blogs that we have about aluminum, it'll talk a little bit about the refining process. And what was really cool is, you know, we looked at some of the history of aluminum to bring this podcast together. And one of the things we saw hundreds of years ago, and I'm going to read it so I don't screw it up, it was talking about Napoleon. And it was talking about, you know, how valuable aluminum used to be when you compare it to things like today. It almost will make you laugh, right? So here we are. Napoleon III is rumored to have given a banquet where his most honored guests were given aluminum utensils. Now think about that for a second. When you go to a store, you're not like, oh my goodness, I get an aluminum utensil today, like this is awesome. No, like that just shows you how rare it was back then and how hard it was to be able to make different products. And even though aluminum is soft, even though it's easy to bend, even though it's able to soak in electricity similar to how copper is, it's still a metal that when you look at it, you try to think about other uses. And when we were looking at some of the other histories of different things, you know, air travel couldn't have been possible without aluminum. We'll talk about that. We also talk about here, when we were looking it up, there's aluminum on the top of the Washington Monument, you know, where you see so many buildings with little gold tips or copper tips or things like that. It's just kind of neat to see, you know, only 150 years ago how different aluminum was compared to what it is today, where, you know, over 100,000 beverage cans are thrown out every few minutes. You know, you look at things like that and you think about how much weight that is. I think it's 16 cans per pound. It's crazy to see how it's changed over the years, and aluminum has become really one of the best materials that are out there. And when we get into some of the numbers and some of the statistics, it'll be really interesting for you to hear some of those things. So let's just jump into basics of aluminum. You know, what is it? Soft, lightweight, and inexpensive metal. You know, we compare it to copper very often, and you always have a 15 to 30% value aluminum versus copper. So it just gives you an idea of how much less expensive it is today. Still a great item to scrap, whether it's sheet aluminum, cast aluminum, or different grades that we'll get into, but it's a very light material. And we always like to give advice while scrapping when you're working with aluminum to have two things handy. A magnet, that's number one. You should always have a magnet handy, because when you hit it, it's not going to do anything. It's not going to stick to it or anything like that. But the other thing that you always want to have is a file. And by having that file, you should easily be able to scratch aluminum. And it's really to differentiate aluminum versus stainless, because you can kind of look at them. They're both silvery in color sometimes. You're not positive. So by scratching it, we have videos and blogs that we've talked about that. So that's a really good thing to think about. And then also with aluminum, when you want to look at it and you want to realize what it is, by using that file, sometimes you can scratch something and it might not be aluminum on the outside, it might look like it, but it could be copper underneath. But these are just different ways where aluminum, when you scratch file through it, it'll almost be like taking a butter knife through warm butter. It should slice right through. It should be a nice, easy cut, and it makes you know that it's aluminum. So aluminum is the second most abundant metal found in the Earth's crust. We also have iron ore, of course, number one, that we've talked about before. And aluminum's physical properties make the metal light. They make it so it doesn't rust, which is a positive thing. That's why so many auto manufacturers are turning to aluminum, not only for its durability, but for its longevity, for its non-corrosive nature. And these are really good things that have helped not only the auto industry, but also the aero industry, the planes and rocket ships and everything else. That's what's really helped to put that into a different realm from where we were even 30 years ago today. It's just so lightweight. And the metal was officially first produced almost 200 years ago in Denmark. So, it took a long time to really isolate that aluminum atom. And once they were able to do it and start to manufacture it a faster process, that's when we started to really see some things changing, helping contribute to the different evolutions in the industry of metal products that we've seen over time. The industries that we see using aluminum now are heavy aerospace, heavy manufacturing, and really the electronics industry have had such an injection of aluminum. You think of something like your smartwatch or your cell phone, where they have aluminum cases because they're lightweight and they're durable. So these are some of the things that we look for. And when we look at aluminum, we said it's the second most abundant metal. Some of the cool things that I saw while reading through our notes, there is currently a reserve of 40 to 75 billion metric tons of aluminum that could last for centuries. And one of the things that you might say to yourself is, well, why do they keep mining it? Well, these reserves are great, but they want to constantly be pulling product out. This way you're able to keep costs lower. This way you're able to inject it into new areas of development throughout the country, throughout the world. So they'll continue to mine this. And some of the most popular countries that they've found aluminum: Australia, Brazil, Guinea, Jamaica, Ghana, Indonesia, Russia. These are really strong areas, and we've always heard how strong of an area that Australia is for different copper and iron ore mining, and aluminum gets bunched into that mix as well. Australia really is one of the best places in the world for overall mining aspects. So just a little side note, it's kind of cool. When we look at some of these different things, Vietnam holds an abundance of bauxite, which is the aluminum coming out of. They say they could have over 11 billion tons in reserves. These are really cool numbers when you think about it. It really puts things into perspective, because it makes you know that it's not going anywhere. And not only is it not going anywhere, it's readily available. And when you look at some of these different things, you look at oil today, where they're constantly pumping it out of the ground. You think in the United States, with 350 or 400 million cars driving, that the oil and the gas would disappear. It would run out after a period of time. And of course, we've talked about the EV market before, but aluminum is very similar. It's the metal that keeps on giving. They keep on finding more of it in the ground. They keep on finding more reserves. They keep on finding new uses for it. Over 75% of the aluminum that's already been manufactured is able to be reused and is reused. Now, 100% of aluminum is reusable, but only about 75% of it actually gets recycled. But when you think about that, that's a really crazy number. 75% of one metal is recycled, and while they might lose some small some small weights during the refining method. Maybe it was aluminum that was contaminated, had too much dirt, had too much of a mixture. You know, when they're recycling it, 75% recycle rate is really, really great, and it makes us smile because we know that you, the scrapper, we as scrap yards and different scrap yard owners across the country are doing their part. Of course, you're making money, but you're doing your part to contribute to that recycling revolution and that reuse, reuse, recycle method kind of getting put into it. One of the things about recycling aluminum, it takes 5 to 15% of the energy compared to what it would if you were, refining it for the first time. So not only is it inexpensive to recycle aluminum, it also is very cost efficient, and you're able to make more aluminum with the existing products that are out there. And these are even more positive things just about the metal. And forget about what it does for you. Using it in so many different applications has made it really, really convenient to use. It's easy to work with. You can extrude it through different molds to create things like window frames and car bumpers, cell phone cases. You'll be able to have all the different blocks having different CNC machines going and clean all the aluminum out. And these are all different things that we look at to be able to learn about the markets. And when you're going to make money with your aluminum scrap, let's talk about some of the different places that it's found. Let's talk about different things that you can do, learn about, and look for, just to give you a better idea of where the markets are. Now, there are general grades of scrap like sheet aluminum, cast aluminum, dirty aluminum, aluminum gutters, aluminum cans, aluminum siding. But these aren't grades, these are categories. Scrapyards generally are not going to buy aluminum based on grade at the scrapyard. So when you're looking to learn about things, don't feel silly if you show up and you see a grade of aluminum. That's generally not how most scrapyards do it. They have generic grades like aluminum gutters and siding and things like that. So when you go to scrap it, these are different things that you want to look for. But there are different grades of aluminum. One of the higher graded ones is 6063 aluminum. And aluminum can be blended with so many other different metals like copper, steel, manganese, silicon. And by blending the different metals with aluminum together, generally you're still going to have aluminum be 90 to 99% of whatever the composition of this new alloy is. But you're also going to be able to have different uses for different things. An example, a car is probably going to have a little more metal inside of it that's not, the aluminum they use is going to have a little more manganese or a little more of a harder material mixed in to provide that car bumper with a little more, hardness, a little more of an impact when an accident or if an accident occurs. But you might have the car panels for that same car in a different grade because they aren't as important as the framing might be or the bumpers might be. So you look at these different aluminum uses, and it's really interesting to learn about them, especially when you go to scrap these different things. You think about a regular car. You have an aluminum block engine, aluminum rims, you have aluminum bumpers, aluminum radiators. Then you have different pieces of aluminum attached to the engine. You can have different pieces of aluminum in the frame. And these are just some of the examples in one thing of a car that you could find different pieces of aluminum to be able to go out there and to scrap. Not to mention different harnesses that are in there, different shock absorbers. While you're not going to see it in a lot of brake pads or rotors, which are still primarily made of steel, in the coming years with the electric vehicle market really picking up, you're going to see more aluminum being used, more aluminum being needed, and these are going to pick up some of the prices as well. Now, other areas that you can look for scrap aluminum, let's just think about a house. Where can you find aluminum inside of your house? Patio furniture, inside table and chairs sometimes are aluminum. Pots and pans could be aluminum. Utensils could be aluminum. Different plates and serving bowls could be aluminum. On the outside of the house, you could have the storm door. You could have the window frames. You could have the screens from the aluminum. Your car in the driveway could have aluminum on it. inside your house, those are some really good examples of where you can find aluminum. Then if you think about it in a commercial setting, where will you find more aluminum? Well, commercial windows are going to have aluminum. Commercial doors, some larger overhead doors are actually made of aluminum and not made of regular steel. If buildings were made really kind of post 2000, you could also see a lot of electrical uses for aluminum, where some of the larger grades of 350 to 700 MCM sizes were made with aluminum instead of copper because it did a very similar job and was much less expensive. But even in your normal house, you will see more and more often the different electrical lines being aluminum and not copper. One common thing that you can look for with aluminum is gray outside jacket shows you that it is an aluminum jacket, where that's not normally something that would be used for copper, but these are other uses that you can see. Now, with the aluminum market, with so much of it being, recycled, how does it affect the economy? How does it affect most of the movement and the money flow? Well, the aluminum industry is almost 1% of the United States GDP. So think about that. If the United States has $1 trillion in GDP, you're going to have 1% of that dedicated to one metal and one industry. And with over 165,000 jobs just in the aluminum industry, making things like aluminum foil, reusable aluminum trays, different recycling bins that are made with aluminum. You have different applications like dump truck bodies that are made from aluminum. You have all types of bars and turnings and different products. So over 165,000 jobs are impacted just from the aluminum industry, and that's a really cool thing to see because it shows you the strength of the industry, and it also shows you the longevity that the industry has, as for years and years it's only grown in size and more jobs have been added into the aluminum industry, whether it's recycling side or new manufacturing or production with the new manufactured aluminum from some larger smelting operations. These are all really good things. Now, to go back to the scrap side of things, what if you think you have a special grade of aluminum? What types of grades are there? What names can you use? We've debunked the myth of extruded aluminum because that's just a process, but you might want to ask your scrapyard, how can you identify 6061 aluminum, or 6063, or 7000 series, 5052, 4000 series? With so many different grades of aluminum that could help make you more money with your scrap, how can you learn about them, not only through resources like the iScrap app provides, but also with your scrap yards? If you're doing regular everyday scrap, you might not look at that, but if you have any type of commercial applications, insulated aluminum wire that you're stripping, commercial window frames that are getting taken out. These are all things that you want to look for so you can continue to learn about it. Now, if you're looking to learn about more aluminum notes or get a better idea of the metal, ask your scrapyard if they have different analyzers. Some scrapyards are happy to analyze your materials. We at iScrap always implore people to send us samples so we can analyze them for them and give them an idea of what type of material they have. You're always welcome to email us and set us up to analyze a sample for you so you learn about different aluminum grades. So when you look at it, now you're saying, okay, well, we've talked about aluminum in our cars, in our buildings, in our homes. Where else has aluminum impacted? Well, the Wright brothers wouldn't have been able to make their first commercial flight in that plane without aluminum. Nowadays they're using aluminum, making it into a very thin mesh to be used inside of the army so they can protect themselves from almost another form of Kevlar to help either bullets or things like that during any type of attack. Aluminum's used there. Aluminum is used not only in weapons, but also in the aerospace industry. Planes, the entire outsides of planes, the shells are made of aluminum because they're strong. They can make them into different aluminum alloys by blending them. Now, you might not see things like the turbines the blades on those planes being aluminum, but all around the housings and everything else are, as are the seats inside of airplanes. When you connect the seat to the floor, look at them. They're aluminum too. When we look at all these different things, it's like, oh my goodness, we haven't even talked about the aluminum can. The aluminum can is everywhere, all over the time. And when you look at aluminum itself, the aluminum can, you hear, ready here, the lifespan of the aluminum can, if it's recycled over and over and over again, it can continue to be used forever. Also, aluminum cans, when they're unopened, they're very strong just because of their cylindrical shape. If they're open, air is inside, so they're not going to be as strong, but that's why they're used in the beverage industry to protect all those different liquids, whether it's seltzer or, I don't know, maybe an alcoholic drink on a Friday night. Aluminum, are you ready for this? 4 6-pack cans of aluminum can hold up a 4,000-pound car. So if you're able to put those cans under each wheel, probably not something that we're going to experiment here for safety stuff at iScrap, but it really is interesting just to see the strength of it, how strong it is overall. And I think I might have said it before, but over 113,000 aluminum cans are recycled every single minute, which shows that they are plentiful, that they are available, and that there's so much weight out there for aluminum getting recycled that it's really good to see how easy it is to recycle it with only 5 to 15% of the energy needed to recycle it instead of using that raw bauxite ore and making it into aluminum. Now, scrappers, we know what you're always looking for is to learn more about scrap. You're looking to learn how to make more money with your different types, whether it's aluminum, copper, or brass. In the summer of 2021, we have our new iScrap app coming out, which is not only going to give you more information on the different markets, but it's going to give you better and quicker access to our blogs, our videos, talking not only about items like aluminum, but also about other metals and catalytic converters. And it's just going to give you a different tool so you can continue to make more money with your scrap. Now, if you have a question for us, for our podcast, Scrapulator, to talk about aluminum or any other metal request, please let us know. We look forward to hearing your reactions. Please make sure you like and subscribe our podcast. If you review us, we'd always appreciate that as well. Until next time, scrappers, I thank you for joining our podcast, and until then, I'll scrap you later.